Thank you all so much for joining today. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. And it's really wonderful to see so many students and university administrators as well joining us today from across the globe. So today, the focus of our conversation, we are going to be discussing U.S. visas and immigration. Interning in the United States, of course, is a tremendous opportunity, and what's most important to note is that legally, it is possible for you to participate in such activities. So we really want to make sure that you fully understand the visa requirements and the processes to help you in the planning process as you consider interning in the United States. This will really help ensure that you understand the steps that are required, both in the sponsorship application process and while in the United States in order to stay safe and fully compliant. So most international students and graduates, so you know, successfully obtain their visas for the United States for internships, and they continue to have very successful and rewarding experiences while in the United States. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So today I will give you a very brief introduction about AIFS, so you know why we're speaking with you today and the basics of finding an internship. And then we'll really dig into understanding what the J-1 Intern Visa is, what the eligibility requirements are for the J-1 Intern Visa, what does the visa sponsorship process look like? And then what are the compliance factors that you need to keep in mind when entering the United States and while on program or during your internship in the country? So let's begin. First of all, a quick introduction so you understand why we are talking to you today about travel abroad and U.S. visas. AIFS, or the American Institute for Foreign Study, is one of the largest and longest running cultural exchange organizations in the world. We facilitate cultural exchange programs for around 40,000 individuals each year traveling across our programs in 30 different countries. We work quite heavily in study abroad, but one of the key areas which we serve, we are designated by the U.S. Department of State to serve as a J-1 visa sponsor in several different categories for high school exchange students, au pairs, summer camp counselors, of course, interns, trainees, and teachers. And we'll talk about what that means shortly. So AIFS Professional Pathways, we are the division of the organization that oversees the administration of AIFS's J-1 designation for the intern and trainee visa categories. So we're working daily with U.S. businesses, immigration law firms, foreign nationals like yourself, both students and professionals at all levels. And again, we'll talk about what this means in a little bit. Ultimately, it's our job to ensure that all parties involved with these J-1 programs are eligible and in full compliance with federal regulation. And in your case, as the foreign national, it's our job to really ensure your safety and well-being while in the United States. So ultimately, again, it is our primary goal to ensure full compliance, safety, and that everyone is having a positive experience while also mitigating any risk as much as possible. This means we are a J-1 intern expert, so we are also available anytime for advising to ensure that you have the information, trusted information that you really need about this visa category. As you know, and we'll shift gears here, you already understand that there's value in internships and, of course, travel. You would not be in today's conversation if you didn't. And of course, living and pursuing professional training abroad, while it is not an easy pursuit, it is very courageous. It provides a transformative experience and many benefits. Of course, any internship, but particularly abroad, it helps clarify your career prospects, identifying those elements of a job that you enjoy and frankly don't enjoy. That is of equal learning value. This, of course, helps make you a more competitive job applicant. Again, not only having an internship on your resume, but to say that you have global professional experience. Again, that really gives you a competitive advantage. Naturally, these opportunities help develop specialized skills and business acumen. You're learning about business culture and relationship building. You're building a global network and establishing mentors in your life to help you as you advance in your career, particularly early on. Naturally, if you're now interning in the United States, if you're coming from a country that English is not the native language, there is no better way to improve your English skills than cultural immersion, and particularly business immersion. And then, of course, you're developing more broadly cultural competency and skills living abroad. Now, don't overlook those as very valuable skills when you're looking for jobs in the future, because you're able to demonstrate through that experience these skills that you've learned in resilience, adaptability, problem solving. That's incredibly valuable. And then, of course, for those of you in your studies or in, again, early career, these opportunities help you accelerate any project deliverables. If you're working on a final practical project for your degree, research as part of your PhD, a thesis, you are able to find ways to connect that to your internship experience in the US. And of course, if you have a requirement as part of your academics to participate in internships, this of course can support that. So while today we aren't really digging deeply into how to find internships in the US, I will gladly send you resources for that after today's session. These are, of course, the general steps that you're going to be taking. And it's really important to remember that the process for finding internships in the US is very competitive, no matter where you come from. And the process is often time bound. So you want to be taking close consideration to any deadlines that you are seeing, and really start the process early. Okay, so really to ensure success in this, you need to be presenting yourself professionally, acting proactively, and again, the process is much more than simply submitting a resume. So, just a few tips here when you're thinking about the timeline. You're going to start your internship search, really relying on reputable job posting sites. There's a few examples here for you: ZipRecruiter, Indeed, Idealist. You can also look at U.S. universities. They often have job boards for their students. Also, research companies that interest you. Sometimes companies are only posting opportunities on their websites. So, research companies that interest you, take a look at their employment pages or work with us pages. Or oftentimes, you can find general email addresses so you can send an email inquiring about internship opportunities. Once you find opportunities that are appealing to you, you're going to apply with very professional materials. Make sure that your resume or cover letter are very well edited, particularly if English is a second language. You're going to take a look and make sure it's a very professional US style format, which you can find templates for that online. And again, you're not only submitting resumes, you are also researching contacts at these companies to provide a friendly, short introductory email about yourself. You will also want to network, whether that's virtual events, on social media. Again, that's another opportunity to introduce yourself to key stakeholders, again, at companies and in the industries in which you would like to intern. For those of you that would like hands-on help, you can also work with trusted internship placement providers or agencies. So you can either initiate that early in the process, or if you're struggling to find something on your own, always turn to those agencies. So you're aware, AIFS Professional Pathways, we do support in internship placements, primarily in the New York tri-state area in many different fields. So if you need that extra help, that is also available to you. You're now going to go through the internship process, have your interviews, and once you receive an acceptance offer, it is then that you will start to pursue the process of J-1 visa sponsorship. At that time, you then obtain your visa, and then you're able to travel into the United States. So you see an approximate timeline here. I would say the internship search itself, the application process, and interviews usually takes around 3 months. And that's if you're acting very proactively. Of course, the earlier, the better. Many internships will have deadlines about 3 to 6 months in advance of the start date. Since you will need a J-1 visa, you will then want to allow about 1 month for that sponsorship process. And then for those of you that need the visa itself, You need to take into consideration booking an appointment at the U.S. consulate, their respective processing, and then receiving the visa to then travel. That generally takes about 4 to 8 weeks. So this is the approximate timeline as you're planning ahead that you should be thinking about. So as you're planning, your key considerations. One, you're going to want to start this process about 6 months in advance, especially if you're looking for internships independently. As soon as you see opportunities, make sure you're applying early to be the most competitive candidates. Again, you're going to take that time beforehand to polish your application materials. And then don't forget, as you're going through the process with the company, you're going to have to leave that time to obtain your visa sponsorship and the visa itself. So you're going to make sure that that fits within, again, the timeline of the offer and then anticipated start date. Other things you should start doing now, take a look at your passport. You're going to want to make sure you don't want to slow down the process at all with a passport that's expiring. You may need to get that renewed, and that can take time, so check your expiration date. Also, start financial planning. Of course, anytime you're traveling, studying, going abroad, there are considerations in that. So you're thinking about your travel, your housing, health insurance, related visa fees. It's possible that your US company will help defray some of those costs for you, but you may not know that until you have an offer. So, again, when you're planning ahead, you may want to be talking to your family about resourcing, looking up scholarships, do your existing scholarships. Many times they can help during your time abroad, especially if the internship isn't credit bearing for you. And of course, if you're working, you can start saving up some now for that opportunity in the next handful of months. And of course, start talking to your university, especially if you need credit for the internship. Make sure you know what those requirements are so that you're only applying or accepting internship offers that will meet those requirements. Or some of you may need to take a leave of absence when interning abroad. Make sure you understand all of that before you start accepting, again, opportunities in the US. Being prepared is key and will help alleviate a lot of stress for you down the line. So in sum, if you once you see internships that interest you in the United States, apply. One of the biggest obstacles we hear from future interns is that they can't find internships that accept international candidates or that the company doesn't provide visa sponsorship. That is okay. The vast majority of US companies literally cannot legally sponsor visas for interns, and that's by design, which we'll talk about in a moment. So when you apply, you'll want to add a line in your application materials, in your letter of motivation, or in a follow-up email to simply say that you have your J-1 Intern Visa sponsorship already lined up. Okay. Again, companies cannot sponsor those visas. So if you see that visa sponsorship is not provided by the company, do not let that be a deterrent. Continue to apply to opportunities in which you're qualified and interested in. So now let's start talking about the J-1 visa. What is it and what are the requirements? So while the visa process will not occur until after you have the internship offer, it's very critical that you understand the eligibility before you start applying for or reaching out about internships. You first need to know, first of all, are you eligible? But also make sure you're only applying to opportunities where the employer is eligible and the position itself is eligible. So first off, what is the J-1 visa? Okay, so to legally intern in the US, you are required to have a J-1 intern visa. Okay, legally, this is not an employment visa. It is officially considered a non-immigrant temporary cultural exchange visa. And the J-1 visa program is actually a part of a much bigger U.S. Department of State, actually a public diplomacy program called the Bridge U.S.A. program. And really the intention is to promote learning and collaboration through educational, professional, and cultural immersion programs. The J-1 intern visa is actually just one of 15 different J-1 categories. And for all of the categories, you will always need to work with a designated visa sponsor. So again, these are entities that are essentially certified by the government to provide the visa sponsorship. For all of these programs, because they are non-immigrant temporary programs, all individuals are expected to return home at the completion of their program in order to share their learnings. Excuse me. So let's talk about your eligibility. So the J-1 Intern Visa is available to current full-time post-secondary students and recent graduates. So we'll dig in a little bit here. So ultimately, to qualify for the J-1 Intern Visa, you must currently be enrolled full-time in a post-secondary degree program outside of the U.S. at an academic institution that is federally recognized. And at the time of applying for sponsorship, you should have completed at least one semester of your studies. Alternatively, we would be checking for if you hold a post-secondary degree from such an institution, and your internship program itself must start within 12 months of that diploma issuance date. Furthermore, you must be at least 18 years of age, a non-US citizen, and you must be able to demonstrate English proficiency, that you have not what's considered non-immigrant intent. Again, you have the proper intent to depart the US, and that you're able to financially sustain yourself while in country. So J-1 visa sponsorship, as I mentioned earlier, is not only about your eligibility as the foreign national. Your U.S. employer, or what we call the host company, and the internship position itself must also meet a series of eligibility requirements. These are very important to note in advance of searching for and applying for opportunities. So here are the key things that you need to keep in mind with the U.S. employer. First of all, the employer must be in business, registered and be in business for at least 1 year, and have at least 4 full-time US-based employees on site. We're also checking for what we call ratios. Essentially, US-based employees must far outnumber J-1 holders on site. So we're evaluating for that in the process as well. They must hold a workers' compensation policy. They must be able to sustain themselves financially for the duration of your program. And they must have a physical workspace. Again, this is a cultural and business immersion. So there must be a workplace with employees that you will be able to intern physically at. They must be able to provide you with a full-time skilled opportunity. This is not intended to fill a labor shortage or to fill a manual labor need. Again, this must be full-time skilled learning. They must have qualified supervisors on site that are able to support in your training and evaluation. They also must be able to agree to that they are abiding by all wage and labor laws in the state, city, and of course, federal laws related, that they are able to provide industry standard wages. Just so you all are aware, particularly if internships are related to your academics, in the United States, employers do not legally have to pay interns. I would say probably, 75% of internships are paid or receive some type of compensation. But just so you have realistic expectations, legally it is not required. But we are evaluating to ensure that it is, again, industry standard. So, for example, if you're interning more in the nonprofit space, it's quite likely that your internship will be unpaid or in the arts. Whereas if you are interning in technology or business, those positions are generally paid. So, anyways, a bit of a caveat there, so you are aware. In terms of visa sponsorship itself, which we'll talk about more in a moment, again, you're receiving sponsorship from your designated sponsor. The U.S. company is not required to provide you with visa sponsorship. However, they will need to agree to participate in the sponsorship process a little bit. So that's essentially completing some forms for us. They may need to have a very brief call with us so that we can educate them on the program. And the supervisor will be asked to complete a survey at the end of the program. So they will need to agree to participate in those areas. As for the internship position itself, to qualify for the J-1, the position, first and foremost, must be related to your field of study somehow. It must be full-time. That essentially means at least 32 hours per week. Of course, this is an immersion program, so you must be immersed into the workplace. You must be primarily speaking English on the job. And again, while you're contributing your skill set and helping the organization in various capacities, you must be experiencing clear training with learning objectives while participating in this program. And again, we need to be able to demonstrate that you're advancing skills and experience and knowledge that you already have. Again, these are skilled opportunities, so clerical activities cannot exceed 20% of the time. You should not be participating in manual labor. Again, this is an immersion program, so fully remote positions do not qualify for the J-1. However, you can participate in hybrid. So what we essentially have to check for is that you are physically on site at the workplace at least 60% of the time, again, accompanied by experienced staff. The position, again, must include a qualified supervisor and regular monitoring and supervision, as well as mechanisms to evaluate your performance. Again, it's cultural immersion, so we're also looking for not just that immersive experience in the workplace, but opportunities outside of the workplace as well. Furthermore, qualifying positions can range anywhere from 3 weeks up to 12 months in duration. Now, there are a couple of other, in addition to manual labor, there are some other exclusions. So things that you cannot, types of positions you cannot participate in. So for example, any positions that involve patient or animal contact or care, aviation, farming, coaching, these things are not permitted. Also, you cannot serve as a line cook or wait staff. Again, if you're in the culinary field, we're really looking for advanced culinary training. Again, not serving in temporary sort of traditional labor roles. For those of you in the field of education, programs in pre-K are not allowed. You would be focusing primarily in primary and secondary education there. So related to that, we'll take a look here. Apologies for the lag. There we go. These are the general fields in which you can legally participate in internships in the US. And it's important to note, by the way, different visa sponsors can serve as your sponsor in different industries. So there are some sponsors that may only be able to support J-1 visas in, say, business or, say, hospitality. Here at AIFS, we cover all industries for the exception of construction and agriculture. So we are able to support in visa sponsorship anything in fields ranging from hospitality to the arts. I'd say most popular, of course, we see STEM industries, technology, computer science, engineering, business. We see a lot of folks in communications, PR, marketing, so really across the board. So it really is quite exciting to see how many wonderful opportunities are available. So finally here, practically speaking, some of the benefits of interning under the J-1 visa program. And of course, not to mention, I should add, there are countless global leaders, some very high percentage of global leaders who have participated in J-1 programs. So, of course, if you participate in these programs, you are joining the ranks of some very prestigious individuals across the globe. But anyways, practically speaking here, under the J-1, you are legally interning in the US in any city or state, again, from 3 weeks to 12 months. Plus, under the J-1, you have what's called a grace period, which means you can enter the US legally up to 30 days prior to your internship start date, and you can remain in the US for recreational purposes up to 30 days after your internship end date. So this means you're in country for that internship, the 3 weeks to 12 months, plus you are legally able to remain in the US for an additional 2 months for, again, recreation, travel, and cultural immersion. The J-1 visa provides you legally with full-time US work authorization. That means you're able to apply for a social security number and legally receive compensation from a US business. Furthermore, under the J-1 program, you are interning at vetted US employers providing learning opportunities, while also being protected by labor laws, and you are supportive. You have an added level of support of a visa sponsor who is serving as your advocate, looking out for your best interests while you're here. So this is all very helpful when you're thinking about your safety and security and when you're thinking about receiving academic credit. Again, these are learning opportunities. And then for those of you who have a positive experience, under the J, you also have the option to extend your program. So say you're here for 3 months, your host company has some additional opportunities for you or asks if you would like to stay for an additional semester, you can do that. You can extend your current program up to that maximum duration of 12 months. Furthermore, there is no limit on the number of J-1 intern programs you participate in. So, for example, you may participate in an internship, say the second semester of your second year. You can come back for a new internship the summer after your junior year. And again, after you graduate, maybe as your first job post-graduation, you could come back for a third internship post-graduation. Again, there is no limit on the intern category of the J-1 visa. So let's get into the visa sponsorship process. Okay, so as noted, you need to work with a visa sponsor. What a sponsor essentially does for you. One, they are vetting for compliance and are providing advisement. Again, they are your expert in all things sort of immigration from the J-1 perspective. And again, they're vetting you, the position, and the U.S. business. The sponsor is issuing your federal sponsorship documents, which we'll talk about in a moment. They are maintaining your federal government records here in the US. They're also supporting you with pre-arrival resources to help you prepare for your time living in the US and to better understand, say, your employment rights. Again, and they're here, the role of the sponsor does not end once you arrive. We are here to provide in-country support and guidance as well. We're monitoring your well-being, available 24/7 for emergency assistance. Again, what we are most concerned about is your safety, well-being, and your positive experience. As a sponsor, we're also providing you with U.S. health insurance. We are administering federally mandated program evaluations. And then we will also provide you with things like, at the end of each year, tax support, any forms you need to file for U.S. taxes. And in major cities, we are periodically hosting various cultural events that bring together interns from across the globe. Regardless of what sponsor you work with, they will not provide the visa itself. The visa itself is provided by the U.S. consulate. Sponsors also, unless it's an add-on service, do not provide housing, nor are they your compensation provider, nor do they provide your academic credit. So those are things that you would have to work through. Again, we were talking about planning earlier. However, your sponsor should be able to help with some advisement. So again, in your pre-arrival orientation, you'll receive resources to help with a housing search, or information about what you can expect on compensation processing. Further, if you need help with obtaining academic credits, say an official letter confirming your successful completion of the program, or a copy of various federal documents to provide your university to help in that credit process, we of course can always help you with that. At any rate, this is the primary function of the visa sponsor while you're on program. So to obtain visa sponsorship, you do have to complete an application process. And there's two parts to this process. First of all, you and a representative of your U.S. employer or host company will register in an online portal, and you are both completing application forms. You additionally will be asked to upload a series of supplemental documents. Once we receive all of this information, your sponsorship application is considered complete and the evaluation process begins. During the evaluation process, we'll follow up with you if we have any questions, if any documents need updating. We'll also be working with your host company to really understand the details of your position. We may be setting up that call I mentioned earlier. And once we have everything that we need, as the sponsor, again, we are then issuing two sets of documents for you, your DS-7002 official training plan and your DS-2019 certificate of eligibility. We will also be providing you with a third document, it's called a CVIS receipt and I-901. It is these three documents that you need in order to book your appointment at the consulate to obtain your visa. At that point, you apply for your visa, The timeline again is sort of in the hands of the U.S. consulate, and then you're able to travel into the United States. We generally say, as I mentioned earlier, once we have a completed application, the evaluation process to issuing of the documents, we say plan for 4 weeks. Sometimes it's less, and we do also offer expedited processing. However, again, sometimes there is a bit of follow-up that does need to take place. So again, when you're thinking about that timeline for planning, anticipate this part of the process taking about 4 weeks. Now, during the application process, here's sort of what you can expect that you'll need to submit. So first of all, we'll be working with your company. Your company will be submitting basic information about the business, who's providing supervision, what are their qualifications, the job description, details on the job description, what are the learning objectives, how are they evaluating your performance. This is the type of information we're collecting from your U.S. host company. From you, in the application form, you're primarily providing us with personal information, your name, date of birth, location, citizenship, your address. You'll have a very short essay question about your motivation, details about your personal finances, how much funding you have available for your time in the U.S., and to provide us any information about past U.S. visas. In terms of supplemental documents, you'll be asked to upload proof of enrollment or recent graduation. And that can come in the form of course, a diploma, but also a copy of your transcript or a letter from your university. And here we need to see essentially what degree type you're pursuing, what is your major, make sure that we can clearly see your institution's name and of course your name to make sure that both the institution, that the institution meets all of the requirements, but also that these documents are yours. And then, of course, we want to see your most recent, so your current semester or most recent semester enrollment status. Remember, we need to see that you are considered full-time. And we will want to see courses from at least the current or most recent semester. Again, we're looking to make sure that the studies align with the training opportunity, again, and that you have been pursuing your studies on a full-time basis. You'll also be providing proof of English proficiency. So this can come in the form of test scores from the last 3 years, proof of prior study in the U.S. If you've studied abroad here during your post-secondary studies, we could consider that. Some of you are at universities where English is the primary language. That's fine too. Or you're able to opt for a short interview with us. So if you don't have those documents ready available, no problem. We'll have basically a Zoom call with you for about 10 minutes. You'll be uploading an updated resume that will outline any prior internship or work experiences and those employers' names and locations, basic information again about your background. And of course, you're uploading a valid passport. And it's very important that that passport is valid for up to 6 months after your internship end date. So as I noted, your application for sponsorship will be evaluated. Once you're deemed complete, we're issuing 2 key documents to you. That DS-7002, which you see on one side of your screen, that's essentially sort of a glorified federal document version of your job description. And then the DS-2019, which is the most important document, the formal federal document that states you have visa sponsorship. It is that document that dictates when you can legally intern in the U.S., when you can arrive and depart the U.S., where you can legally work, etc. So these documents end up outlining some of that biographical information we gathered, basic information about the company, which visa category you're in, who your sponsor is, who your legal employer is, those internship dates, field of training, your funding sources, and again, those internship details. Details on both these documents must be accurate. So once you receive these, always make sure to review them, and you're going to make sure that you have them with you at all times throughout this process. So once you have these documents in hand, Canadians that are joining us today, you're actually ready to travel. The U.S. government has an agreement with the Canadian government, in which case you do not need a hard copy of a visa. So that DS 2019 that's been issued, you can just go ahead and travel. No more waiting time for you. For non-Canadians, you then have these documents issued by your sponsor. You then have to complete an online form. It's called the DS-160 visa application form. And you're then able to schedule a visa appointment at the U.S. consulate in your country of citizenship or residency. This process, I would say, the wait time can vary greatly depending on location and time of year. For example, around the holidays, there's greater delays. On average, this takes between 2 to 6 weeks. If you need to come to the US sooner, if there's not flexibility in a start date, some consulates will accommodate an emergency appointment. You're then going to attend your appointment. You're bringing your passport with you, all of those documents that were issued by your sponsor. You also, and this is new as of July, before your appointment, you need to make sure that you set all social media accounts to public, which I'll explain in a moment. You're then going to attend your appointment. The appointments are quite short, and you're asked just a few very pointed questions. So it's really important that you can concisely and accurately talk about why you're coming to the US for this J-1 internship opportunity, cultural exchange, know your dates, your field of study, name of your host company, etc. After your appointment, your case will then go into a review of your social media and online presence. Basically, the government is looking for any security threats. They have advised to allow about 2 weeks for this process. We've seen this process now, again, completely vary by individual and country, ranging from 2 days up to 3 weeks. But again, plan for this to take about 2 weeks before your visa is then approved. Now, think about your visa essentially as your ticket into the United States. What that essentially says is here is the period of time in which you can legally enter the US. Again, your presence in the US is based on that DS 2019 that was issued to you. Your visa is dictating when you can enter the United States. So it's going to have some of your basic biographical information, and it's also going to list the number of entries, the number of times you can legally enter the US. So for some of you, although it's rare, it might say one. That means you can enter the US to start your program, and that's it. You cannot be traveling abroad and re-entering during your J-1 program. For many of you, you will see what says the letter M, which stands for multiple, which means you are legally allowed to travel in and out of the country during your program. Of course, you want to limit that naturally, so not to interrupt your immersive experience, but nonetheless, that is important to note on your visa. The visa will also tell you if the 212E home physical presence rule applies to your visa. So you know this is quite rare, but sometimes it is applied depending on your field of training and what country you're coming from. And anyone who is receiving government scholarships or funds specifically for your intern program, the internship program in the US, the 212E rule will apply. And that basically says that after your J program, you will have to wait 2 years before you could apply for an H, L, or K visa or apply for permanent residency. Now, finally, let's talk about your entry in the US and ensuring your compliance while you are here. Okay. So to ensure that you are in full compliance, again, so you should not have to worry about any issues, again, entering the US or being in the US, again, should you maintain full compliance. So first, you're going to make sure that you are arriving within the 30 days of your start date, not sooner, because if you try to arrive sooner, you will not be entered on the correct visa classification. So you're going to enter within those 30 days. You're going to make sure that you have all of those federal documents with you when you enter. Your passport, your DS 2019, your DS 7002. That way you do not have any issues at the border. And similar to your consular appointment, always at the border, you're going to be asked one or two questions. Again, make sure you can very quickly and accurately convey why you're coming to the US. You are coming to intern and for a cultural exchange program, and make sure you know the dates of your opportunity here. Upon entry, you're going to immediately communicate with your visa sponsor to what's called validate your visa. Basically, what we then do as a sponsor is let the government database know, yes, the foreign national is here, they're where they're supposed to be, and they're ready to start their program. That is very important. So you're going to validate your visa with your sponsor as soon as you arrive. You also want to immediately check what is called your I-94 arrival record for accuracy. This is when you enter the United States. This is another database that records your entry, your port of entry, date of entry, your visa classification. It's usually correct. Sometimes where we see some issues, in particular, are land borders, more so for Canadians. But anyways, you want to check that record, make sure it's accurate. If it's not, don't panic. Again, that's rare. Don't panic. There are ways to get it corrected. Just let us or your sponsor know. And then you're going to print a copy of that I-94 record, and you're going to keep that with you all the time. You're going to put it in your wallet. You're going to keep that in your DS 2019 with you at all times. Why? Because in a rare scenario that you encounter law enforcement, those are your official documents that say you have legal status in the United States. So, in terms of your compliance while you're here, as we stated, you're going to validate your visa right away. Again, especially if you're receiving compensation, you're going to go through the process of applying for your Social Security number so there are no complications, again, with compensation. You're going to keep that I-94 and DS 2019 on you at all times. You also want to make sure that you have a copy of those documents, in your suitcase or in your apartment. Again, just in case something would happen that you would lose the documents that are on hand. Or again, if you would ever need help, say if you're in an emergency situation, if you would ever need help, a roommate or family member, sponsor, supervisor, someone else could access them on your behalf. But of course, keep them in a secure place when you do this, because you do have a lot of personal information on those documents. To stay in compliance, you are going to intern full time. Remember, at least 32 hours per week, and you're going to follow all of your company's policies. Okay, you are considered, for all intents and purposes, an employee in many respects. So again, you're going to abide by the rules of the company. And again, you're not going to fall below full-time status, otherwise you fall out of compliance. You're going to follow that DS7002 document. That is your official training plan and job description that must be followed. So if there are changes to your programs, no problem. You're going to let your sponsor know so we can make updates to those forms. But again, for full compliance, both you and your supervisor must be generally following the information on that document. Furthermore, you are not pursuing employment anywhere outside of your host company. So the only place you are provided with work authorization is the company listed on your DS 2019. If you are receiving compensation from an outside source or you decide to pursue a part-time job on the side, that is not legal employment, so do not do that. You also need to be living within a 50-mile radius of your site of training. And of course, while you're in country, you're abiding by the law, of course, the most important thing there. And finally, to sort of conclude your program in full compliance, as I noted earlier, sponsors are mandated to issue program evaluations. So you will need to complete that evaluation at the end of your program. Or for long programs, you may also have a midterm evaluation. With that, we're just making sure that, again, you're safe, that you're meeting learning objectives, that you're following your training plan, etc. And then, of course, to complete your program, finally, you are departing within 30 days of the end date listed on your DS 2019. Do not overstay that requirement. That can create long-term problems for you if you want to return to the US. So you're going to make sure you depart within those 30 days. And of course, throughout your experience, you want to stay in communication with your visa sponsor, okay? You're going to share any changes that may occur to your internship program, your location, your supervisor, your general activities. Again, we'll make sure that your federal documents are accurate and up to date. You're going to obtain approval before any international travel. Again, while we advise limiting international travel, for most of you, it is perfectly fine to do so during your program. Sometimes you need to travel back to for a thesis dissertation or for a wedding or something like this. It's okay, but you need to get approval from your visa sponsor before you do that. So you're going to communicate with your sponsor about any planned travel abroad. You're going to notify your sponsor if any of your visa documents have been lost, stolen, or damaged. Again, that's personal information that may be out there. So we want to make sure that we are reporting that to the government, again, just to protect you. And it provide you with further guidance on what to do, again, in cases where it's, say, stolen. You're also going to report any workplace problems. Again, you have your sponsor here to help protect you, and you should not be in any type of abusive experience or in a workplace that is, again, out of compliance. So you're going to communicate any of that to us so we can either mitigate the situation or remove you from the unsafe or non-compliant experience. Okay. You're also going to report any emergencies, legal, medical, etc. We're here to help. From a regulatory perspective, many times we also have to report certain emergencies to the government. If they go unreported, again, that's non-compliance. So you're gonna be open with any key emergencies. And then, of course, you're going to notify us if you're extending your internship, or on the other side, if you're departing early. Again, we want to make sure that all of your federal records and your documents are completely accurate so you have no troubles at all. So I know we've covered a lot of information here. So in terms of your key takeaways, you are planning ahead, right? So if you already have an internship, you want to make sure that you're starting the visa sponsorship process at least 3 months in advance, ideally. If you are searching for an internship, you're really starting that process at least 6 months in advance of when you want to start. You're going to be proactive. You're going to be communicative, whether that's in your networking and finding an opportunity or whether you're on program and maintaining that communication with your sponsor. You're going to stay informed. You're going to make sure that you're reading all of the federal documents, that you understand your program, you know all of the documents you've signed off on, that will put you in sort of the most secure position. Again, you're going to lean on your visa sponsor for support. You're going to maintain accurate documents on you at all times. Okay, and you're going to behave responsibly and professionally while participating in your internship and while immersing yourself in your local community. Again, you are following the law. And then, of course, most importantly, have fun and immerse yourself. The reality is, you have this tremendous opportunity and you're able to take advantage of whether it's in the workplace, out of the workplace, within your communities, volunteering, travel. You have so many opportunities that are afforded to you while you are on program. Take advantage of that. It will only benefit you in the long run. And again, all of that can be pursued under the J-1 Intern Visa. So thank you so much. We are thrilled to have been able to share this information with you today. I hope that was helpful for those of you that are considering internships in the US in the coming months or years. You are welcome to reach out to us anytime for general visa guidance or questions. You have our email address here, professionalpathways@aifs.com. Again, and we're also more than happy to schedule calls. Again, respond to inquiries about your specific case. If you saw something here that made you question eligibility, if you're hearing about U.S. immigration in the news and you want to know how that's impacting these programs, we're always here to help. So feel free to reach out anytime, again, for that certified and trusted guidance.